With these changes to the criminal code, Ottawa would give prosecutors the means to prosecute anyone who is intimidating healthcare workers. And since we've been dealing with this terrible health crisis for almost 2 years now, and our healthcare system is more fragile than ever, it's really essential that we take the necessary steps to protect the healthcare system. We need to do this as a society. We need to ensure the health and safety of our healthcare workers who have protected us throughout this whole storm. I need to interrupt the honourable member. He will have 6.5 minutes after question period to complete his speech. Statements by members.
The honourable member for Kitchener Centre.
Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to speak today to recognize the International Day of Persons with Disabilities and some of the incredible organizations in my riding of Kitchener Centre who are working to enable people with disabilities to live with independence and dignity. From Kids Ability, who empower children and youth with special needs to realize their full potential, to KW Rehabilitation, who works with our community to inspire abilities to enrich the lives of children, youth, adults, and families. The list, it goes on and on. It includes Extend to Family Waterloo Region, KW Accessibility, Adults in Motion, Christian Horizons, Bridges to Belong, Independent Living Waterloo Region, Community Support Connections, and the Social Development Center. These organizations, fueled by their wonderful clients, volunteers, donors, and staff, are serving with compassion and improving lives every day. But, Madam Speaker, we must do more to create an inclusive country for everyone. I'm proud to be sponsoring my first petition with the leadership of Disability Without Poverty, calling to fast-track
the honourable member for St. John Rothesay.
Madam Speaker, I rise in this House today, humbled and privileged to be returned for a third term. I want to thank the people of St. John Rothesay for their amazing support in giving me such a strong mandate. But Madam Speaker, as we all know, you can't get here alone. I want to thank my family, my beautiful wife Denise, my sons Christian and Connor. I want to thank my campaign team led by Kevin Collins and Warren Coombs. I want to thank those that campaigned in my riding, even the leader of the official opposition who campaigned not only once but twice in my riding. I want to thank everybody to help me return. Madam Speaker, I was elected to come here, collaborate, and advocate for the riding of St. John Rothesay. I'm here to deliver critical funding for projects like Port Phase 2, the Coverdale Transitional Centre for Women, transitional housing. I was elected to come to Ottawa to fight for my riding of St. John Rothesay and to get to work, and Madam Speaker, I am going to do just that. Thank you.
The honourable member for Cumberland Colchester.
Madam Speaker, Nova Scotia is the most beautiful province in Canada. I am fortunate to represent the riding of Cumberland Colchester and visit natural sites such as the Cliffs of Fundy UNESCO Global Geopark. There are 5 UNESCO sites in Canada, and the Cliffs of Fundy is the only one in Nova Scotia to be bestowed this honour. Within this park are highlights such as the highest tides in the world, the Not Since Moses run along the beach floor, and Ottawa House by the Sea, a summer residence of Sir Charles Tupper. This majestic park stretches 165 kilometres across the north shore of the Bay of Fundy, spanning 77 communities from Lower Truro to Apple River. Tourists from around the world visit the park's captivating and unique scenery and adventurous activities. I would like to take this moment to congratulate the Executive Director of the Geopark, Beth Peterkin, for being awarded the annual Lieutenant Governor's Community Spirit Award, celebrating the power, strength, and diversity of vibrant communities across Cumberland Colchester.
For Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and it's wonderful to see you there, and congratulations on your appointment. I am pleased to stand on behalf of all of my constituents in the House today. Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill, and the Greater York Region area is composed of delicate, interconnected natural ecosystems. Madam Speaker, there are 2 highways the provincial government is proposing to construct in York Region. Highway 413 would run through Vaughan, Caledon, Brampton, and Halton Hills to meet highway at 401 and 407 interchange. The other is the Bradford Bypass, which will cut through the Holland Marsh to connect highways 400 and 404. Each of these projects comes with profoundly negative environmental consequences, such as running through the pristine greenbelt and fertile farmlands, raising emission levels, degrading the water quality in Lake Simcoe, and undoubtedly leading to increased development in the green spaces surrounding them. I stand here today to draw attention to the adverse impacts on the environment these projects will cause and to the opposition raised by several First Nations who will be affected thereby. Nearly 10,000 community...
The honourable member for Churchill-Coatineau-Kaski.
Madam Speaker, the climate emergency is here. Indigenous and Northern communities are already paying the price. 18 First Nations and Northern communities in our region depend on the ice roads for survival. For a few weeks a year, thousands of Indigenous peoples depend on temporary ice roads we call winter roads to bring in fuel, building supplies, water trucks, equipment, bulk food, what they need to survive. These First Nations have severe housing crises and a shockingly high cost of living. Ice roads are a lifeline, but they are disappearing. A warming and unpredictable climate means shorter seasons, and this year is even worse. Communities like the East Side First Nations need all-weather roads now. This was in the works under our NDP provincial government, but the Conservatives canceled it, and the federal Liberals couldn't care less. But this can no longer pass. It is a matter of life and death. It's time the federal government work with First Nations to build an all-weather road system. It's time the federal government gets serious about climate change and stand with Indigenous communities.
The
honourable member for Madawaska-Restigouche. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Every day, the entrepreneurs in Madawaska-Restigouche demonstrate their passion and talent.
Creativity since the pandemic. Our local businesses were able to stand out, making a difference in our communities, and we are very proud of them.
Our businesses have held down the fort, and they continue to help our neighbors, our friends, our families, and they provide a good service with a top quality welcome. A good way to show our recognition is to shop local, shop locally for Christmas. And that way we will encourage the economic vitality of all our community.
The economic spin-off goes further than the business itself. I encourage people of Madawaska-Restigouche to discover or rediscover what our local businesses have to offer. Buy local. Achetons ici.
Let's buy here. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Riley's Bakery has been an institution and a must-stop spot in downtown Cornwall for over a century. And for the past 32 years, Rob and Anna Curran have worked tirelessly to grow its legacy as an anchor along Pitt Street. When we talk about the pride we as Canadians have in the hard work and dedication of small businesses in Canada, the Currans are a quintessential example of why. The couple had no money left after they bought the bakery back in 1989 and worked so hard to grow the business. They didn't take vacation for the first 10 years, and they lived in a small apartment above Riley's as they raised their young daughter. Recently, the Currans announced their retirement and sale of the business to the next generation. They deserve a long and happy retirement. On behalf of grateful customers, neighboring businesses, and friends in the city of Cornwall, we thank Rob and Anna and wish these great Canadians all the best in their next chapter of life. Thank you.
The honourable member for Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam.
Madam Speaker, as I rise for the first time in this Parliament, I want to thank the residents of Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, for putting their trust in me to represent our community once again. Madam Speaker, I'd like to take this opportunity to highlight Haley Hodgson, author of O Canada, How We Vote, a children's book about the Canadian electoral process. This fantastic book showcases our Canadian diversity and encourages discussions with young people about equality, democracy, and equity. Haley is also one of my 2021 Port Coquitlam Community Champions Award recipients, which recognizes unsung heroes such as Haley in our community. I encourage everyone to read this great book with the little ones in their lives. Thank you, Haley, for all that you do to build and better our community.
The honourable member for Denethor Mississippi Churchill River.
Madam Speaker, it is indeed a privilege today to rise in this House to pay tribute to the life of Hugh Watt, a committed family man, town councillor, businessman, great mentor, and a loyal friend to many. Hugh moved to the town of La Ronge in 1977 and became a pillar of the community. Whether it was his involvement with his beloved Junior A Ice Wolves, his role as town councillor, or his involvement in many community initiatives, Hugh brought a zest for life that influenced everyone he met. When confronted with a problem that others would say, "We can't do this," his response was always, "We can do this, we will get it done," and he got it done. This week, Matt Clausen was elected to fill Hugh's seat on council. He texted me to say what an honour it was for him to take Hugh's seat. He shared the responsibility he feels and his desire to serve with the utmost of respect. Madam Speaker, I ask all members to join me today in recognizing the life and the legacy of Mr. Hugh Watt.
The honourable member for Don Valley North.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. It is my pleasure to rise today to speak about the New Horizon for Seniors program. Seniors have been especially impacted by isolation and loneliness throughout the pandemic, and the New Horizon for Seniors program has contributed much-needed support to community organizations that have helped seniors to stay connected, healthy, and active during the pandemic. I'd like to highlight a few examples in my writing. Organizations in Don Valley North like Shile Nianhua Senior Center, the Armenian Community Center, and the Iranian Women's Organization of Ontario have helped seniors to learn, use technology to stay connected at home, held virtual exercise classes to keep seniors active, socially involved, and host online painting workshops. For anyone who wishes to apply, application for funding closed on December 21st. I encourage all eligible community organizations to apply for this wonderful program. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Argenteuil-La-Petite-Nation. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to congratulate you for being elected. I take this opportunity today to rise in the House and to thank sincerely the constituents of my riding, Argenteuil-La-Petite-Nation, for having put their faith in me for a third time. Thank you to my family, my friends, our volunteers, my children, for having supported me since 2015. I am proud to represent and to take part in fostering the development of our beautiful riding in cooperation with elected officials, the 4 MRCs in my riding, my colleagues in the Quebec government, entrepreneurs, and the residents of my riding. I am committed to continuing the work that we began together in 2015 with a wonderful, experienced, and diverse team. Thank you to Danielle, Jean, Timmy, and to Martin, who just joined the team. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Chatham-Kent-Leamington.
18 months ago, I congratulated the former Member of Parliament for Kamloops, Thompson Caribou, as she gained a new resident, Brinley Lisette Hubie, my granddaughter. Today, I wish to congratulate the new Member of Parliament for the same riding, for the same reason. As Brinley's sister, Hanley Laurelyn Hubie, was born yesterday to parents Adam and Karina. All are healthy, and I thank God for her safe arrival. 18 months ago, I also questioned the Minister of Finance as to the level of debt that my first granddaughter, Brinley, was to inherit, and asked this question before the massive overspending of the past 18 months. Today, Hannah and her parents, and indeed all Canadians, are facing rising monthly inflation rates and a housing affordability crisis. I implore this government to address our country's financial mess. Many of us began our business careers amid the rampant inflation and the interest rates that rose dramatically during the early 1980s. Surely this isn't the future that we wish for our children and grandchildren. Let's fix it.
The honourable member for South Shore St. Margaret's.
Madam Speaker, the lobster season in southwest Nova Scotia, Canada's most lucrative fishing season, opened on Wednesday morning. Fishermen set out on the harsh North Atlantic in the early hours to set their traps with great anticipation of what the new season may bring, while families at home pray for the safe return of their loved ones. The work is grueling and dangerous. Howling winds, frigid temperatures, and unpredictable waves at sea create working conditions that many of us could only imagine. In coastal communities along the South Shore, the lobster industry is the main economic driver, Families depend on a thriving lobster season to pay the bills and to put food on the table. I hope everyone in this House will join me in wishing all the fishermen in LFAs 33 and 34 a safe, successful, and prosperous lobster fishing season.
The honourable member for Victoria.
Madam Speaker, COVID-19 has been devastating, and getting people vaccinated continues to be our best line of defense against this deadly virus. But while wealthy countries have enough doses, most lower-income countries can't protect their frontline workers, their elderly, their most vulnerable. This means countless unnecessary deaths, but it also means variants like Omicron arise. Vaccine inequity impacts us all. We must waive patents so vaccines can be produced around the world. But this vital measure, called the TRIPS waiver, has been continually blocked or delayed by wealthy countries like Canada. This is not only morally reprehensible, it is unbelievably short-sighted. It means more variants. It puts us all at risk. I call on this government to openly support the TRIPS waiver, to stop protecting Big Pharma, and to start protecting human health.
L'honorable député de Joliette.
The honourable member for Joliette. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, we celebrate the International Day for Persons with Disabilities. The themes always need to remain equity, accessibility, inclusion. On behalf of the Bloc Québécois, I want to salute the many contributions made by people with disabilities in Quebec society, despite the real obstacles that remain. The World Health Organization has said that more than 1 billion people around the world live with one type of handicap or another. That's a lot of talent and great minds, and they deserve our governments, businesses and organizations do the utmost to ensure they can achieve their full potential. Today, we have to think about what we can do together in Quebec and around the world to ensure better equal opportunity for all. We have to think about the prejudices that continue to exist. It's the opportunity for us, legislators, to think about the impact we can have on public policy affecting people with handicaps. It's the opportunity to say hello to the members of our families, friends, colleagues, and fellow residents, because these are the people we're talking about. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Today is International Day of Persons with Disabilities, a special day for wonderful people in our lives who carry an extra burden and through whom we can experience and see the innate worth of dignity of their lives. I think of Shaylin, who despite her wheelchair and SMA diagnosis is an advocate, podcaster, YouTuber, and judging from her Instagram, a beach bum too. I think of Calgary mom Janelle and her daughter Raya, who was born with trisomy 13 like my late daughter Lucy Rose. Raya is a fighter, having defied the odds many times over. I think of my oldest daughter Jolie, who despite her dyslexia is working through her 14-volume Dork Diary set with gusto. Focus on someone's disability and you will overlook their abilities, their beauty, and their uniqueness. They and all Canadians with disabilities can count on my colleagues and I to fight for them each and every day. Conservatives are the voice of Canadians left behind by this Liberal government. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Kitchener-Conestoga.
I rise today to mark the International Day of Persons with Disabilities and to celebrate the strength, the resilience, and important contributions of persons with disabilities. I'm proud that we're creating Canada's first Disability Inclusion Action Plan, which includes the Canada Disability Benefit, a robust employment strategy, and improved processes for eligibility and disability programs. Engagement on this plan with the disability community and with provinces and territories is ongoing. So in the spirit of nothing without us, let's work together to realize an inclusive recovery and a more equitable society for all. So I invite all Canadians to celebrate this day by highlighting the incredible contributions of persons with disabilities in your communities. People like my good friend Aaron Callan in Kitchener-Conestoga, whose smile is infectious. Together, we can build a truly inclusive and accessible Canada. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions orales, oral questions. The honourable member for Edmonton Millwoods.
Madam Speaker, Conservatives have repeatedly warned this government that their reckless spending would fuel inflation. They said that it wouldn't, and yet here we are. The cost of everything has gone up. When will this government take real action to help Canadian families that are struggling to afford the most basic items like groceries?
L'honorable ministre.
Madam Speaker, it's a real pleasure to see you today in this session, and I want to congratulate you. Madam Speaker, to answer the question of my colleague, and I'm very happy, and I hope there's a lot of questions about the economy today, Madam Speaker, because we have very good news to share with Canadians who are watching at home today. Thanks to the hard work of Canadians, Madam Speaker, in November, Canada added 154,000 jobs, Madam Speaker, which is 5 times more than some had forecasted to our economy. Madam Speaker, our plan is working, our economy is growing.
Honourable member for Edmonton Millwoods.
Madam Speaker, as they say, small businesses are the backbone of an economy, and we need to help them thrive to help get our economy back on track. But because of liberal inflation, labor shortages, and rising shipping costs, many businesses are struggling just to stay open. Why does this government continue to ignore the needs of Canadian small businesses?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for his very good question. We all appreciate and understand in this House that small businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, are the backbone of our economy, Madam Speaker. And that's why that during this pandemic, Madam Speaker, you will recall, this government was there to support them at every step of the way. One thing we said to small business is that we will have your back as long as it takes to make sure that we go through this pandemic together, and we'll continue to support them, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Millwoods.
Madam Speaker, just this morning, analysis from National Bank Financial revealed that for the first time in decades, private sector investment in Canada has actually shrunk. Canadian factories are currently operating with the lowest capital stock in 35 years. The Liberals have made it harder to open and to operate a business in Canada. When are the Liberals going to realize that the just inflation economy is slowly destroying Canadian jobs?
Honourable Minister.
Speaker, and I'm very, very happy for the member's question and to talk about the economy this morning, because I have other good news, Madam Speaker. And in fact, Madam Speaker, 106% of the jobs have been recovered since the pandemic, Madam Speaker. This is astonishing, and this is thanks to Canadian workers, Canadian business, and that compares to 83%, Madam Speaker, south of our border. Madam Speaker, we will continue to invest in workers, we'll continue to invest in our economy, and one thing that Canadians watching at home understand is that our plan is working, Madam Speaker.
L'honorable député de Louis-Saint-Laurent.
Madame la Présidente, depuis 6 ans de... For 6 years, the Liberal government, especially over the last few months, has led to a trend. The government spends a lot of money, prints a lot of money, borrows a lot of money. 1, 2, 3. 3 aspects that mean that Canada is dealing with the worst inflation crisis since 2003. Every Canadian family is paying more and dealing with a higher cost of living. Could the Liberal government commit to just one small, responsible thing? Is the government ready to control their expenditures? The Honourable Minister.
Madame la Présidente, j'aimerais remercier.
I would like to thank my honourable colleague for Louis Saint-Laurent, for whom I have a great deal of respect. I am pleased because this morning he's giving me the opportunity to share great news with the House and Canadians. Thanks to the hard work of Canadians, in November, Canada added 154,000 jobs. That's 5 times higher than some forecasts. If there's one thing that Canadians are saying, it's that our plan is working because our economy is growing. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Well, Madam Speaker, I invite my colleague to go somewhere where they're distributing food baskets and say that everything's going well. No, things are not going well. Families are suffering more, are paying more, and that's true for every Canadian family. In my riding, there's a relief assistance organization, Amélie Frédéric, that's noted a 25% increase in requests for food baskets. 25%! That is the reality of inflation. The director of Amélie Frédéric said that our donors of yesterday are recipients today. The Honourable Minister.
Madame la Présidente, je voudrais remercier le député.
I'd like to thank the member for Louis Saint-Laurent. And I understand that I distributed food baskets to families in need earlier this year, but if there's one thing that Canadians will remember about this government, it's that when there was a pandemic in Canada, we were there to support them. We were there for families, we were there for workers, and we were there for businesses. The best thing we can do, and I would give some advice to the member in opposition, is to support Bill C2, which will continue to help families and workers in Canada. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Madam Speaker, for 8 months, the government has been hiding information about what led to the firing of 2 scientists at Canada's top secret virus research centre. For 8 months, the government has refused to produce documents that would shed light on possible espionage for China. Now, it's changing its mind and offering to present documents to opposition parties, but in an extremely restricted and controlled way. The government leader calls this a gesture of good faith. Does this mean that for the past 8 months, the government's been acting in bad faith? The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The balance between ensuring the House has access to all documents and ensuring that national security interests are protected is absolutely paramount to this government. That's why we suggested that the National Security Committee of Parliamentarians be used so that members of Parliament could have access to all documents in an unrestricted way. Opposition parties said that that wasn't enough, and we're willing to go further. And so we're suggesting the model that was used for Afghan detainees in 2010 as the way to proceed. I look forward to talking.
L'honorable député de Saint-Jean.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. It's normal to ask questions. Scientists that appear to have ties to the Chinese regime had access to the most confidential secrets, had to be fired. But instead of being transparent and offering answers, the Prime Minister first called the opposition racist and even went to court to prevent you from demanding documents this House was asking for. It's like Canadians suing a referee to prevent him from applying the rules. Does the government realize that the public has a right to the truth and that opacity only encourages speculation? The Honourable House Leader.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Et c'est absolument clair que toute l'information est disponible pour le député, mais c'est essentiel.
It's absolutely clear that the information is available to members, but we need a system or... Pardon? We need a system where we can check information with members in a safe way. These documents have to do with national security. We need a system to protect our national security.
La petite patrie.
Rosemont la petite patrie.
Nouvelle journée, nouveau chapitre.
New day. A new dark chapter for armed violence in Montreal. A 30-second murder happened in Montreal. Nearly 60 weapons were seized at the border, and they were destined for Montreal streets. There are too many weapons still in circulation. At the border, we need more resources in order to protect our children. That's enough. Will the minister commit today to taking real measures to stop the trafficking of illegal weapons at our border? The Honourable Minister. I want to thank my colleague for his question. Every case is one too many. We're taking steps to fight this type of violence, and we're making significant investments. We've established a working group with the United States, and I will be consulting my Quebecois counterpart later today.
Strathcona.
Madam Speaker, health experts have told us that if countries like Canada do not work urgently to get vaccines to the world's most vulnerable populations, dangerous variants like Omicron will continue to develop. The global impacts will be dire. More people will die, and the COVID-19 nightmare will continue. Canadians want to get back to normal, but that won't happen unless everyone, everywhere, has access to the vaccine. The Liberal government is moving way too slow. Will the government scale up production, waive patent restrictions, and make sure vaccine...
L'honorable ministre, the Honourable Minister.
Thank
you, Madam Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for the important question and for her advocacy on this very important issue. It is precisely why, from the very beginning, Canada stepped up when in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It is precisely why we helped found, support, and also co-chair the COVAX AMC group, and it is exactly why we have donated millions of vaccines to the developing world, because we understand that until we end this pandemic everywhere, we don't end it anywhere. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Madam Speaker, small businesses have struggled through an enormously challenging year. On December 31st, they'll be ready to toast a more prosperous and brighter new year. But who will be knocking on their doors when the clock strikes midnight? The Liberal tax collector. The New Year's hangover this year will be the CPP increase. After such a difficult 2021, why are the Liberals increasing CPP taxes on businesses?
Great question. The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, it's a real pleasure to be raising in this House again today. Madam Speaker, I think the member is misleading in the question, Madam Speaker. In fact, Madam Speaker, this is not an increase, Madam Speaker. This is not a tax, Madam Speaker, and we will make sure that we'll be there. What Canadians understand, Madam Speaker, is that we have been through them, we have been with them at every step of the way during this pandemic, and we'll continue to be there for small and medium-sized businesses, Madam Speaker.
Honourable member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Well, Madam Speaker, the government says the January 1st payroll tax hikes are necessary, but a payroll tax needs a payroll to tax. Statistics Canada's most recent survey of business conditions say that 1 in 4 businesses expect their profitability to be down by the end of the year. And there's been many times this year where more businesses have closed than opened. Is the government not concerned that a higher tax in this country's current economic conditions could cause further small businesses to fold?
Yeah, great question.
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for the question because it gives me a chance to explain to this House and to Canadians who are watching at home this morning, Madam Speaker, one thing that Canadians and small businesses across this nation will remember, Madam Speaker, is that we have been with them at every step of the way to this pandemic, Madam Speaker, at the start, during the pandemic, and will continue. One piece of free advice I have for the Conservative, Madam Speaker, if they are genuine and wanting to help small businesses in Canada, why don't they support Bill C2 instead of voting against like they did yesterday?
The Honourable Member for Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
Madam Speaker, elder abuse manifests itself in many forms. Financial, emotional, mental and physical abuse is rampant against Canadian seniors, and it is only increasing. In the last Parliament, this House unanimously agreed to M203. Among other things, this Conservative-led initiative called for legislation to combat seniors' fraud. This was over 2 years ago. When will this government take meaningful action and introduce legislation to protect Canadian seniors?
Honourable Minister.
Is totally unacceptable and is an issue that is extremely important to our government and an issue that we all take very seriously. We're working on initiatives to combat seniors abuse, including strengthening the law, creating a national definitions and better data collection, Madam Speaker. This builds on the work that we're already doing with the National Seniors Council. Projects, Madam Speaker, such as New Horizons for Seniors program help raise awareness around seniors abuse. And I hope the honourable member and indeed all members in this House apply for the call for proposals for New Horizons for Seniors program. The deadline is December 21st, and I hope all members apply.
The Honourable Member for Hastings, Lennox, Leamington.
Madam Speaker, last week I rose in this place to ask the government when they were going to rectify their GIS clawback that is currently crippling vulnerable seniors. The Deputy Prime Minister, in the process of deflecting the question, touted a one-time payment of $500 as some sort of compensation. Our seniors are losing up to 9 times that amount because of this clawback. I ask again, when will this government show compassion and step up? Our seniors need it, and they deserve it.
Honorable Minister.
We all know just how challenging this pandemic has been on seniors. And Madam Speaker, every single step of the way, this government has been there to support seniors, especially those most vulnerable, by strengthening their GIS. We moved very quickly, Madam Speaker, to provide immediate and direct financial support to seniors. When it comes to the SERB GIS issue, Madam Speaker, we are aware of this issue, and I can assure the honourable member that we're working on this issue to find the right solution to support those affected. As always, Madam Speaker, we will be there for our seniors.
Honorable député de Bellechasse, les Etchemins-Lévis.
Bonjour, Madame la Présidente. Hier,
Yesterday, U.S. countervailing duties on Canadian lumber doubled. I spoke last night with the Quebec Forest Industry Council, which is very alarmed for these businesses that create 60,000 direct and indirect jobs. The money that these companies make is being swallowed up by American customs instead of being reinvested. Many of them are family-owned businesses like DG in Saint-Aurélie, Dacom in Saint-Just, or Sierry-les-Mets in Sainte-Marie. What does the Prime Minister intend to do to convince the American president to back down? The Honourable Minister.
Madame la Présidente, je remercie ma collègue.
I would like to thank my colleague for her question. I'm from Mauricie, and so I know the forestry industry quite well. There's even a forest school in my riding, but what she should know is that the Minister for International Trade is in Washington today to defend of forestry workers. What people need to understand is that we will always be there to defend the forestry industry, workers in this industry, and ready to work. Madam Speaker, inflation is hitting Canadians hard. Home ownership is in doubt for many. U.S. countervailing duties on softwood lumber have made the situation worse. And add in a possible rise in interest rates, and the storm will be complete and brutal. The Prime Minister needs to get his act together, take leadership on this issue, and get this decision reversed. How does he plan to do that? The Honourable Minister.
Madame la Présidente, s'il y a une chose que les Canadiens...
If there's one thing that Canadians know, it's that on this side of the House, we know how to defend businesses and industries' interests. We demonstrated that in the steel file and the aluminum file. When I was running out of breath earlier, what I was trying to say is that the Minister for International Trade is in Washington to defend the interests of forestry workers and to defend the interests of the industry as a whole. That's what we're doing today, and it's what we're going to continue to do.
Député d'Avignon-Lamitis, Madame Matapédia.
Madame la Présidente, ça s'est encore produit.
It happened again. Gun violence struck in Montreal once again. Yesterday, a 20-year-old man was shot and killed. A 17-year-old teenager was also injured. It happened in the middle of the street in a residential neighborhood at 7:15 p.m. Madam Speaker, families in Montreal are afraid. They're afraid of losing their children, afraid of being hit by stray bullets, afraid of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, even though they're in their own neighborhoods. The Minister knows he has a duty to act, but does he also understand the urgency? The Honourable Minister. Madam Speaker, we agree that it's important to have working groups at the border, and they've been in place for some time now. This week, over 60 firearms were seized, thanks to a partnership between RCMP, Sûreté du Québec, and Montreal's police force. We're going to mobilize everything we can to ensure that our children and our families can be safe. Thank you. Madam Speaker, this was the 32nd homicide in Montreal this year, and we've still got a month to go. I welcome the seizures, but more needs to be done. I welcome the Minister's openness to attending the summit convened by the Mayor of Montreal at the end of January, but we need to act faster. The Government of Quebec announced $46 million this morning for violence prevention. We feel the urgency to act, but we feel it less in Ottawa. What is the Minister going to do today to demonstrate that he understands this urgency? The Honourable Minister. Madam Speaker, We will continue to fight the trafficking of weapons at the border, and we want to end violence in our communities. We promise to invest $1 billion into the provinces and municipalities in order to eliminate handguns. As I've already said, I have a virtual meeting with my counterpart in Quebec to find more real solutions that we can implement on the ground.
Thornhill.
Madam Speaker, in times of doubt and uncertainty, Canadians can rely on one thing from this government: more confusion. Yesterday, the U.S. announced new travel restrictions for Canadians. On our side, the minister announced new testing measures for all travelers coming here. He didn't say who would administer the test. He didn't say where travelers would have to isolate. He didn't say when these measures would begin, and he didn't tell airports or airlines. So I have a few simple questions for the minister. Who, what, where, when, and how will Canadians get details on this new plan?
The Honourable Minister. Thank you. I'm very pleased to answer this question very quickly. This is the first time I've had a chance to rise in this House. I want to welcome the new pages who are here. I mention it because the member for Hull-Aylmer and myself were pages many years ago. We know just how important this responsibility is, and we are grateful for everything the pages do. Now, when it comes to the question, our decisions are science-based, and we're going to protect everyone's health and safety. Madam Speaker, the Liberal government announced last week stricter measures at the border in order to deal with the new variant, as requested by the Conservative opposition. And a week later, we can see there's a gap between what the Minister of Health says and what's really happening. No consultation with airports, no consultation with provinces regarding on-arrival tests. In short, it's a shambles. Is the Minister of Health aware that improvisation has no place in public health and in protecting Canadians overall? The Honourable Minister. Thank you. I'm delighted to have the first question from my colleague, the Conservative critic, on health and safety. Very quickly, the first thing I want to say is that everything we do is science-based, and now there's some confusion. I regret to say that just a few days ago, my colleague was requesting the cessation of all tests at the border. It's interesting to know how Conservative MPs have received vaccinations in the country. The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Wouldn't add to the confusion. Canadians are stranded in South Africa. They're desperately trying to get assistance from this government. Yes. They're having to jump through hoops just to find an affordable PCR test or a safe flight back home. Instead, their calls for action have gone unanswered by this government, and it's scrambling to provide them clear guidance. Does the minister have a plan to help bring these stranded Canadians home, or are they just going to keep sending those calls to voicemail?
Madam Speaker, and I'm again very pleased to be able to say a bit more on that. We are delighted to work very well and very constructively with airports across Canada, with public health officials. I'm also pleased to remind every Canadian that the best way to protect ourselves is following public health measures and be vaccinated. And talking about a call to action, what about the action of Conservative MPs who have not yet been able to benefit from the 61 million doses already administered to Canadians?
L'honorable député de Mégantic-L'Érable.
Parlons de la lenteur, Madame la...
Talking about being slow, this government has been slow to act. Everybody recognizes that they were slow to act at the beginning of the pandemic, slow at the border, slow with vaccines. To this day, no one seems to know who's going to pay for on-arrival tests for international travels. The health minister said on Wednesday it's going to take a long time to set up. It will take time. Really? 20 months later? Haven't they learned anything yet? The Liberals don't understand that time is what counts the most to avoid a fifth wave. Why are the Liberals so slow to act? Madam Speaker, I am so pleased to answer this question. Just a few months ago, my colleague and his colleague for Calgary Nose Hill were saying that Canadians should wait and are going to be waiting until 2030 to get vaccinated. I am pleased to remind my colleagues that we are among the most advanced countries when it comes to vaccination. But we might have to wait until 2030 for all the Conservative MPs to get vaccinated.
Vancouver East.
The Liberal government has failed to meet even 1/10 of their commitment of protecting Afghan refugees. Their continued insistence on layers of red tape have left tens of thousands of Afghans fleeing the Taliban unable to get to safety. With each passing day, Afghan collaborators, human rights advocates, judges, women and girls face heightened risks. Will the Liberals simplify documentation requirements, waive the need for refugee status determination, as was done for the Syrian Refugee Initiative, grant temporary resident permits for those in need, and increase staffing for processing?
Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I want to begin by thanking my colleague for her question and for her advocacy on addressing the humanitarian crisis situation in Afghanistan. And of course, we express solidarity with all who remain there, and we are working day and night to continue to bring Afghan refugees to Canada. In fact, Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to inform the Chamber that just yesterday we welcomed an additional 243 Afghan refugees in Canada. Which is not to say that there isn't more work to do, Madam Speaker, and this government will do that work in partnership with everyone, including the Canadians who wish to see us fulfill that goal. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Winnipeg Centre.
Madam Speaker, this week a PBO report showed that women are still not being paid equally in Canada, and many won't see pay equity until 2029. That is 8 years from now. Remember when the Prime Minister said gender equity was important because it was 2015? 6 years later, this Liberal government and women are still waiting for pay equity because of their failure to act. Incremental justice is unacceptable. When will the Liberals correct course so women get pay equity?
The Honourable Minister.
I would like to thank the honourable member opposite, the NDP critic, for the question and thank her for it, and want to let her know that we have women's backs and have had women's backs, Mr. Speaker. We have seen the equity and the gaps in real time. We know that we had to act, and we did. $100 million, Madam Speaker, to shelter organizations because we knew that women were at risk, women fleeing intimate violence were at risk, and that's what we did. When it comes to gender-based violence, $3.8 billion, Madam Speaker, is going towards that, and we have women's backs and will. I look forward to meeting my
Honourable Member for Winnipeg South.
Pandemic, the economies of the prairie provinces, including my home province of Manitoba, have been some of the hardest hit. Because of the strong advocacy of our Manitoba caucus, a new regional development agency specific to the prairies was announced by our government. Could the minister responsible for prairie economic development please update this House on how Prairies Can has supported businesses throughout our fight against COVID-19?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, let me first congratulate the member on his re-election and the fine work that he's done both in the city of Winnipeg and on the prairies. As noted by him, Prairies Can was created over the summer to address the unique needs of the prairies and focus on local priorities. Through this pandemic, Prairies Can has provided more than $461 million of new money, supporting close to 7,000 businesses on the prairies. Wow. Additionally, through Budget 2021, we have announced $360 million of new money to support businesses and workers on the ground. Prairies Can will...
The Honourable Member for South Surrey White Rock.
Madam Speaker, Russia's foreign minister has just told our foreign affairs minister that the nightmare of military confrontation is returning. The Prime Minister has reportedly told Ukraine's president that Canada will use every single tool possible to deter Russia. With 115,000 soldiers and thousands of tanks and armored vehicles at Ukraine's border, CDS Air said Canada will offer no CAF support. I asked the minister again, as I did yesterday, who is in charge and how will Canada defend democratic Ukraine?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I
I thank my honourable colleague for that question again. And I will just say that since 2015, under Operation Unifier, Canada has been steadfast in its support of the Ukraine with troops on the ground, undertaking training exercises day in and day out. We stand with our Ukrainian partners as well as our NATO allies in terms of presenting a united front against unwarranted Russian aggression. And we will continue to work on a multilateral basis to uphold the international rules-based order, peace and democracy. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
A member for Saskatoon University.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just last year, this government said that there's no path to net zero without nuclear. But when it comes to nuclear energy and SMRs, the new environmental minister is hiding, both in virtually and in reality. I'd like to congratulate Ontario for selecting GE Hitachi last year as the design partner for SMRs. And I would like to know if our new Minister of the Environment will continue hiding from nuclear energy, or will he take the opportunity today and congratulate Ontario?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our government has developed an ambitious climate plan, one of the world's most detailed and concrete plans. In that transition towards a net zero future, we must consider all non-emitting technologies, including wind, solar, hydro, and yes, nuclear energy. It is certainly an important part of the mix right now that exists in this country, and we have been supporting the development and the assessment of small modular reactors. I had a very good conversation with my counterpart in Ontario, and I did indeed congratulate him on an important step forward in the development of this technology.
Can we lower the rhetoric, please, and let the minister answer so we can all hear the answer? L'honorable.
The Honourable Member for Montmagny, Lille, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Madam Speaker, in a joint announcement with Quebec on August 6th, the government committed to reviewing its immigration regulations, particularly with regard to temporary foreign workers. And they proposed increasing the acceptable threshold of temporary foreign workers within companies from 10 to 20%. Despite the rhetoric, there's been very little concrete action. After 4 months of very little news, will they finally do their job? And will this become effective on December 6th? Yes or no? The Honourable Minister.
Madame la Présidente, je tiens à...
Madam Speaker, I want to thank my colleague for the question. We've worked closely between the federal government and the government of Quebec, which has the jurisdiction of setting immigration targets. In terms of the percentage of temporary foreign workers, yes, there is a pilot project in the works. We will continue to work with our Quebec counterparts to deliver the goods and to deliver the immigration that Quebec needs. Thank you.
For Sturgeon River Parkland.
The price of everything is rising under the inflationary policies of this Liberal government, and few have been harder hit than Canadian farmers. The price of fuel and drying grain have skyrocketed because of this escalating Liberal carbon tax. Now the Liberals are proposing a whopping 30% decrease in fertilizer emissions. We know the impact on farmers and families will be devastating. Less food production and higher prices on the grocery shelves. Why is this Liberal government deliberately undermining the food security of Canadian families?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadian farmers are important stewards of the land. Yes, we have set a national target for emission reduction from fertilizer. And actually, the Western producers conducted a little informal survey about the 30% target. And hear what they say. We asked a dozen soil nutrition experts, including 10 retail, independent, and federal government agronomists, to weigh in on this issue. Most agreed that Ottawa's emission reduction goal was achievable and does not require making do with less fertilizer. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Shefford.
The Honourable Member for Shefford. Madam Speaker, since the summer, the Bloc Québécois has been asking the government to stop unfairly cutting the guaranteed income supplement for older workers who were entitled to the CERB. We've been told that the minister is working on a solution, but it's taking far too long. The GIS is a benefit for the poorest seniors. The hundreds of dollars that Ottawa is taking back from them every month, these people can't just charge it to their credit card while they wait for Ottawa to step in. These people are making sacrifices month after month and having to make more and more difficult decisions. When will the minister take action?
Honourable Minister.
Speaker, from the very beginning, our government's priority has been to support seniors, especially those most vulnerable. That is why we've worked extremely hard to strengthen income security for seniors, including their GIS. Madam Speaker, we created benefits like CERB to help people at the height of this pandemic. We know it's having an impact on some of our most vulnerable now, and I can assure the honourable member that we're actively working on a solution to ensure that we fight for those most vulnerable. We're always going to be there to support those most vulnerable seniors. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madame la députée de Shefford.
The Honourable Member for Shefford. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister confirmed on Wednesday that the minister was working on a solution to this injustice. That's good. But today, seniors have a right to demand that the minister tell them exactly what this supposed solution actually is. It's simple. We need to ensure that the CERB is considered as employment income for the purpose of calculating the GIS, and we need to ensure that seniors can demand a recalculation based on their current income. Will the minister confirm that this is exactly what she is working on, and can she tell us when she will have a result? The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, as I mentioned, we're working to find the right solution to support seniors affected by GIS changes due to pandemic benefits. But Madam Speaker, let me remind the honourable member the number of things that we've done to help seniors. We've increased support through OAS for those 75 and above. We've strengthened GIS for vulnerable single seniors. We provided one-time payments during the pandemic to help seniors afford the things that they need, Madam Speaker. We have an ambitious agenda for seniors, and we will always support seniors. Thank you.
The honourable member for Charles Woods, St. James's and Aboya Headingley.
Madam Speaker, Norway, Poland, Singapore, Mexico, Russia, Brazil, Indonesia, Argentina, the Philippines, India, Pakistan, Ukraine, New Zealand, a country the finance minister says is very much like Canada, they all have the same thing in common. They have increased interest rates as a result of inflation. What is the plan to protect Canadians when interest rates inevitably rise in Canada? Or is it just interest?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, it's quite a pleasure to see you again this morning, and I'm happy to see that my honourable colleague wants to talk about geography, Madam Speaker. Let me mention a few countries: the United States, Mexico, Germany, the Eurozone, and New Zealand. What do they have in common, Madam Speaker? More inflation than in Canada, Madam Speaker, because in fact, the member would well know that the latest inflation number in Canada was 4.7%, Madam Speaker. What Canadians understand at home is that we have a plan to grow this economy, and that our plan is working, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Niagara Falls.
Madam Speaker, Canada's new PPE manufacturing industry is already in a state of crisis. These patriotic innovators answered the government's call to help Canadians when PPE supply was short and badly needed at the start of the pandemic. Despite the Prime Minister promising to buy made in Canada PPE, all I can find in the parliamentary precinct are masks that are made in China. When will this Liberal government start supporting Canadian PPE innovators and manufacturers and stop breaking their promises?
The Honourable Minister.
In the House in the 44th Parliament, so I want to thank the good people of Hamilton, West Ancaster, Dundas for electing me. It truly is an honour. With respect to the member's question, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, we know that Canadian businesses have pivoted. They retooled, and we have supported them every step of the way. We are in a position now where we are not short on PPE. Why? Because Canadian businesses stepped up, and our procurement efforts have supported those businesses. We're going to continue to do that, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
The honourable member for Northumberland South Peterborough.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. When this Prime Minister called this unnecessary and unneeded election, federal development applications were put on hold. 3 months after the election, these applications are still on hold, Madam Speaker. When will these applicants hear from this government?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for the very important question, Madam Speaker. What the members know is that on this side of the aisle, we have been there for small businesses. We have been there for businesses throughout the pandemic. Madam Speaker, I take his question very seriously. If he has a case at point, we'll be happy to look at it on this side of the House and provide him a response. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
L'honorable député de
The Honourable Member for Louis-Hébert. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Once again, Montreal was touched by a shooting and a young man lost his life last night. It is imperative that our government take every step possible to put an end to this scourge of illegal cross-border arms smuggling. So I'd like to ask the Minister of Public Safety to inform this House of what measures are being taken to protect Quebecers from illegally smuggled firearms. The Honourable Minister. Madam Speaker, I want to thank the member for the question. And my thoughts are with the residents of Montreal who have all too often had to face armed violence, including most recently last night. Almost 60 illegal firearms were seized at the border this week, thanks to the colossal collaborative work between the RCMP, the Sûreté du Québec, and the Montreal Police Force. We need to do everything within our power to ensure that our communities are kept safe. And as I said earlier today, Madam Speaker, I will be meeting virtually with my Quebec counterpart. The Honourable Member for Pelnage-Jacques-Cartier. Thank you, Madam Speaker. This government needs to take the issue of official languages seriously. This week, the Commissioner tabled a report showing that Francophone immigration is way behind its targets. He said it's time to do better and time to do more. So why not kill two birds with one stone? Bring in French-speaking foreign workers to solve the labor shortage and increase the number of French-speaking citizens. I'd ask the Minister of Immigration to put in place more effective administrative measures to address the labor shortage now, while increasing the presence of French in Canada. The Honourable Minister. Madam Speaker, our government recognizes that it has the responsibility to protect and promote the French language, not only outside of Quebec, but also within Quebec. A key aspect of promoting and protecting French is encouraging Francophone immigration in all of the regions of our country. This is something that we promised in our platform. And we will be moving forward with the establishment of a national, ambitious strategy that will promote Francophone immigration outside of Quebec while continuing to promote the French language among immigrants to Quebec. The Honourable Member for Chatham-Kent-Leamington.
There are over 4,400 natural gas wells throughout southwestern Ontario, a number of which are in my riding, including the community of Wheatley, which was rocked by a natural gas leak explosion this past summer. On August the 17th, the Ontario Petroleum Institute and the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry wrote to the Ministers of Natural Resources and Finance seeking to collaborate on the development of a program for Ontario's orphan wells. Will this government commit to working on this critical issue in southwestern Ontario?
The Honourable Minister. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the Honourable Member for the question. Certainly, the issue of orphan wells and the environmental liabilities that they represent is a significant issue for all Canadians. We, as you know, introduced a program focused primarily on the Western provinces during a time of great financial crisis. Typically, the issue of the regulation of oil and gas producing companies and the environmental liabilities associated with that rest at the provincial jurisdiction, but we are always happy to engage a conversation with our counterparts in provinces and territories when they raise concerns.
The Honourable Member for Saskatoon University.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In their race to the moral high ground, the CBC has blindsided Canadians by appointing themselves Canada's word monitor. They recently brainstormed a list of 18 words which should never be uttered. Now, I wonder if it was a real slow news day in the taxpayer-funded public broadcaster. But dictating a list of words is actually no substitute at all for the real work needed to end aggression. But does the Minister of Canadian Heritage actually think it's the job of the CBC to think for Canadians?
L'honorable ministre. The Honourable Minister.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank my colleague for the question. They know well that Radio-Canada, CBC, is independent and makes its own decisions. And the Conservatives would love to cut CBC. They've said so many times in the past. I think that's concerning for our national broadcaster, Madam Speaker. I wonder if they still would love to make drastic cuts to the national broadcaster or if they've changed their position.
St. John's East.
Madam Speaker, 90% of Canadian seafood goes through small craft harbours, and Canada's fish harvesters depend on these facilities to support their livelihoods. In my riding, the Harbour Authority of Portugal Cove, St. Phillips, is the centre of community life and an industry hub for fishing, trade, shipping, and other marine sectors. Can the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans please provide an update to this House on what our government is doing to support small craft harbours? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, I would like to congratulate the new member from St. John's East for her election. And to thank her for her question and to thank her for the hospitality she showed me when I visited Atlantic Canada just weeks after my appointment, and including to the harbour of Portugal Cove, St. Phillips, and met with the authority members there in her riding. Small craft harbours, of course, play an integral role in many, many of our communities and their economies. Our government recognizes their importance, and that's why through Budget 2021 we invested $300 million to repair and keep.
The Honourable Member for Timmins, James Bay.
The Environment Minister announced that he has blown yet another deadline in dealing with the climate crisis. I mean, God help our planet. No wonder this government is now at the bottom of the G20 when it comes to renewables, right down there with Russia and Saudi Arabia. So while Joe Biden is committed to an energy transformation that's tied to good-paying union jobs, our Prime Minister is tied to targets he keeps missing. So where is this plan to invest in the diversification using the skill and training of energy workers so that no region is left behind? The clock is ticking here.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As my honourable colleague knows, Canada has developed a climate plan that is perhaps one of the most detailed and comprehensive in the world. I would invite him to actually read the document. Canada also, I would remind him, has one of the cleanest grids in the world as it exists today. Actually, more than 80% of Canada's power comes from non-emitting sources, the vast majority of it from renewables, which is one of the highest levels of renewable production anywhere in the world. But we certainly understand that there is more that needs to be done. We will be bringing forward an enhanced reduction plan associated with our commitments under the net zero legislation, and we will be working to ensure that there is economic prosperity.
And that is all the time we have for oral questions today. Tout le temps qui nous reste pour les questions orales, l'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Laurent, Louis Saint-Laurent. Yes, Madam Speaker, I have a point of order to raise. During question period, the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, in response to a question by my colleague, the member for Kelowna-Lake Country, said, and I quote,
in her question. Fin de la citation.
End of quote. Madam Speaker, you know that all members here, and this would interest the Minister in particular, cannot suggest that they have misled, that somebody has misled the House. The Minister is an honourable man. I would invite him to take action with dignity, all the more so because he sat throughout question period at the office of the Deputy Prime Minister. The Honourable Minister. Madam Speaker, I appreciate the point raised by the Leader of the Opposition. I apologize to my colleague if I offended her with my comments. That was not my intention, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Okay, so let's take it again. Honourable Member for New Westminster Burnaby on a point of order.
Madam Speaker, I'll be standing under the section motions in routine proceedings.
Okay.
Then there's Mr. Ramanathan.
Longueuil-Charlemagne.
The member for Longueuil-Charlemagne.
Madam Speaker, there have been discussions amongst the parties, and if you seek it, I hope you will find unanimous consent to adopt the following motion. That today, on the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, and in the spirit of Nothing Without Us, the House reaffirm its commitment to continue to work to identify, remove, and prevent barriers that still exist and increase the opportunities available to persons with disabilities. Thank you.
All those opposed to the honourable member moving the motion will please say nay. The House has heard the terms of the motion. All those opposed to the motion will please say nay. The motion is carried. Okay, tabling of documents. Dépôt de documents. Dépôt de projet.
Introduction of government bills.
Déclaration.
Statements by ministers.
Rapport de.
Reports from interparliamentary delegations.
Presenting reports from committees. Introduction of private members' bills. First reading of Senate bills, public bills. Motions. The honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and with thanks to my colleague from Port Moody Coquitlam, on this International Day of Persons with Disabilities, there have been consultations amongst the parties, and if you seek it, I hope you will find unanimous consent for the following important motion. That given that 50% of the homes